September 7th, 2021 meeting of the Monona City Council to order. Would the clerk please call a roll?
Alder Crewer.
Here.
Alder Goforth.
Here.
Alder Groupie.
Here.
Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder Moore is excused. Mayor O'Connor is excused. Council President Thomas.
Here. I'll entertain a motion on the minutes for Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll entertain a motion on the minutes from August 16th.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Additions, corrections? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved as written. Item D, appearances. We will have a summary presentation of the 2020 financial audit by a member of the audit team, Amber Duinski, and I think she's going to call in.
Yep, she's on the line right now. And she's from Clifton Lawson and Allen.
Amber,
Hi, can you hear me?
we can.
Okay. Excellent. I'm going to try to be as brief as I can, but get you the information that you need. But if there's any questions, feel free to interrupt. Otherwise, there'll be still time after if you have any questions. So you should have received a bound financial document, and I'm just going to start on page 1 of that document. This is our independent auditor's report. So we have audited the accompanying financial statements of the governmental activities, business type activities, of each major fund and the remaining aggregate fund information of the City of Monona as of and for the year ended December 31st, 2020. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of these financial statements, and we express an opinion as auditors. On the top of page 2, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the City of Monona as of and for the year ended December 31st, 2020. So that is a clean, unmodified opinion, the best opinion we can provide from an audit perspective. Just below that, there's an emphasis of matter. That is saying that the city adopted GASB statement number 84, which was first applicable for year ending December 31st, 2020. And what that did was pull out your advanced tax collection and pull those out that were owed or due to other governments and show them as fiduciary, as a fiduciary fund. So that's something just slightly different in the financials if you would compare current year to prior year. Overall, in total, no change from comparative perspective. Then I'm going to go to page 13. Just a couple points here that I want to draw your attention to. You'll see a net pension asset just at the, not quite the top of the page, but maybe a third down. That relates to the city's proportionate share in the Wisconsin retirement system. And we do restrict that net position down below. That's a non-cash item that the city really doesn't have a lot of control over. And you can see for your governmental activities, you had an unrestricted net position of a deficit of $17 million in the governmental activities, and then a positive surplus of $3.5 million of net position. Now these numbers are kind of skewed from a governmental activities perspective because that includes all your long-term debt, all your capital assets, and the city's very capital heavy and very tax incremental district heavy. So that's a little bit misleading. So on page 16, we are going to look at fund balance. And this is a little bit of a better picture operationally wise where the city is. And the unassigned fund balance as of December 31st, 2020 was just over $1.7 million, which is approximately 27% of your current year 2020 expenditures. We always like to see government in the range of anywhere from really 15 to 30%, depending on cash flow, and that sounds like a big range because it is. But it can depend on state aids, property tax collection, timing, and things like that. So you're in a very good percentage there, and right in the range where we would want to see the city. So there is a full budget to actual report, a summarized version on page 20, and a more detailed version on pages 70 to 72. The city had budgeted a deficit of about $449,000. Actual came in about $585,000. That's primarily due to some transfers to some other funds from the general fund, and that is just general fund speaking. Not a bad year compared to, that's what you were expecting, so not anything surprising there. Then I'm going to go to page 21. 21, this kind of lays out your water and sewer, storm, and transit funds. And this, in the business type activities, we do like to look at the unrestricted net position. Your water utility had about 1.8 million in unrestricted net position. Sewer just shy of 900,000, and stormwater about 760,000, and transit about 33,000. Those are all in good condition, and again, very capital heavy, just because of the infrastructure and the nature of the operation, which is expected. When we talk about net position, that can be also a little bit misleading because we like to talk about cash flows. So on page 23, this is where the cash flows, we like to look at cash flows from operating activities, and then see if you're able to cover your debt service payments and your capital needs. And you had a change in cash and cash equivalents in total of a surplus of 1.1 million across the water, sewer, storm, and transit. Sewer made up the most of that, of about 567,000, stormwater about 275, and the water utility about 220. So a good cash year for all of the utilities across the board. On page 25, this is the new statement, the fiduciary fund, and that is the GASB 84 implementation. And this is the advanced tax collections that are due to the other governments, and then this receivable portion that is on the statement of taxes that is owed to them. Then I'm going to skip to the back, and as part of the audit, we also review internal controls. So on page 97, this is our internal control over financial reporting and compliance report. And as part, we do not issue an opinion on the internal controls, but we would make any recommendations or disclose any findings or non-compliance that we would have within this report. And there were no non-compliance items and no findings to be disclosed. As part of the audit, we always inquire about internal controls, and we do discuss various items throughout and make recommendations just to make sure your internal controls remain enhanced and that you can continue to improve as technology changes, as personnel changes, and so forth. Any questions on the bound document?
Are there any questions? No. No questions.
Okay, otherwise I just have one stapled document, and this is our governance communication that we are required to provide and disclose. Just a couple, again, the accounting policy that we implemented, GASB statement number 84, that there's some accounting estimates included in the bound document, which includes the other post-employment benefits, the depreciable life of capital assets, your fair value of your investments, the net pension asset and liability, and the deferred inflows and outflows, your allowance for uncollectibles, and your accumulated sick leave. We did not have any disagreements with management and no difficulties encountered during the audit. Your staff is great to work with. Always enjoy coming down and working together. So on page 4 of that document, that just gives you a summary of the governmental fund balances current year to prior year. And you can scan through that. As I mentioned, the biggest change is kind of the general fund that is aside from your capital project funds, which those can fluctuate depending on the capital projects that are happening, and same with any debt service funds. Any questions on any of those items?
Any questions? No questions.
Excellent. If any questions come up or if there's ever any concerns or questions throughout the year, Brian and Mark both have our contact information. Feel free to reach out. Otherwise, that is all I have for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.
There are
Bye-bye.
no other appearances, so I will close the appearance section. There is no public hearing. There is no consent agenda. Item G, council action items. Finished, unfinished business. Item A, consideration of ordinance 8-21 2018-743, amending Section 18-10 of the Code of Ordinances regarding the Community Media Committee. Is there a motion to approve?
So, I'll move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
I'll just make a note that while I appreciate the conversation about this between the mayor and staff, I do think it is a little bit of a missed opportunity not to attempt to fill these seats with other representative members of our community. So,
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, consideration of Resolution 21-8-2506, consent to assignment of renewable energy credit service agreements. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
Just one point of information for the council. One change to this resolution that came to us this morning from Legacy Solar. Under the therefore be it resolved clauses under number 2, where it lists out the 2 ways in which we would get surety or coverage from Legacy Solar. They've asked to strike the surety bond and instead increase the cash deposit to be a total of $25,000. Which would cover the total amount of surety that we were requesting in the first place. So it would just all be coming in the form of cash to be held in account by the city rather than doing half cash, half surety bond. So we're comfortable with that from a staff perspective.
Are the maker and the second comfortable with that as a friendly amendment?
Yes.
No. Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move to item 2, new business. Item A, consideration of resolution 21-9-2507, approval of a 3-year police office resource officer agreement between City of Monona and Monona Grove School District and the Village of Cottage Grove. Chief, would you like to? I should comment while he's coming up that that the Finance Committee recommended approval.
Thank you. Administrator Ghetto, would you like to comment first?
Yeah, sure. Just real briefly, in your packet materials, you have a copy of the full agreement as it's been approved by the Monona Grove School District. It has been reviewed by the Cottage Grove Village Board and approved by them. So it is up to the City of Monona City Council to review and approve it as well. It is for a 3-year contract. If you recall from our discussions earlier in the year, our contract ended at the termination of this past school year. The Monona Grove School District wanted to take some time to establish an internal working group to review whether or not they wanted to still maintain that position in the school and under what parameters. They've done that and kind of adopting the contract that's included in your packet. The chief has some additional commentary on how this contract would impact the SRO officer from Monona should the council approve this contract, and we can answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you, Council. Thank you, City Administrator. As was indicated, this MOU was voted on by the school board. I spent, since my start here in June 1st, I think appropriately so, it deserves the attention that has been provided. Have met with students, former students, staff, educators, general members of the public, in order to get their feelings and insights, good and bad, about their experience with the SRO program, and I take that to heart. But I also spent a lot of time addressing a lot of questions and concerns, and maybe highlighting some good things that some members of the school board have expressed about the SRO program. I think we're all in agreement that there needed to be a change in sort of our operating philosophy of the program, particularly at Monona Grove High School, as it relates to sort of making sure that we're both the school district and the community police department. So this police department was on the same page. So, clearly define the roles and expectations of the SRO, at the school. And what I think there was an opportunity for was for me as the new chief to bring in my philosophy and my outlook as it relates to what I believe that program their role in the school is. And that is really just to underscore that they are there as a resource for that educational community. And in highlighting that, I want to make an emphasis that we are to be relied upon as somebody who can give counsel as it relates to behaviors that might in the community rise to the level of a police call, but that when we're consulted, it should not necessarily, it should be a rare case, in fact, that the outcome be a law enforcement outcome. So I want to make sure that we continue to provide support for the school, that in the vast majority of the cases, that the outcome is a school-based outcome and not necessarily a law enforcement outcome. And so what we discussed are parameters that are put in place via school policy, or as I have given my SRO as directives from me as the chief of police, put in place to limit sort of some of the unintended consequences, I think, that many members of the school and the school board had raised concerns about. That being instances which led to citation or arrest for offenses that we as police officers have a great deal of discretion. Now, I can say that there are some matters in which we are compelled under state law to investigate, right? Domestic violence cases, and as mandatory reporters, we obviously have to look into cases of child abuse as well. But again, those instances, for the most part, in which we have are involved in or are consulted on, should not necessarily, in fact, the vast majority of the time, I think I've said that twice now, I'll continue to say it, should not result in a law enforcement outcome. We are there as a resource. We are there to consult. We are there to help put the other piece of the puzzle that may be missing. Because we have a lot of information, I think many of you know, as police officers in our community who have access to a lot of information from things that happen outside of the school. And by us being involved in those discussions and involved in that holistic sort of programming and that outcome, we're able to provide that extra piece that's missing. And so I think in my conversations with individuals, my conversations with the internal committee, my conversations with the board, and my conversations with my counterpart with the Village of Cottage Grove, I think that moving forward, we will see what I hope to be a very good program with this MOU. And so you'll see some language in the MOU that reflects a lot of the items that were discussed during the several-month, I wouldn't say a debate, but I'd categorize it as an exploration with respect to the program. And I think it best reflects sort of the intended goal here, both me as your new chief of police and what I see is providing a safe learning environment for our schools, as well as the school board, who I will give credit, spent a lot of time evaluating, asking very hard, challenging questions, and really taking a good internal look at their own policies, as I have done with the police department as well. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for the chief? Jennifer?
So you talked
Oh,
about,
Kurt, sorry.
that's okay. You talked about some changes that were going to be made moving forward. I'm just wondering how are those changes going to be implemented, and/or what is kind of compelling those changes to happen? What if they don't?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that question, Alder. I will highlight you to one thing that I think is critically important, and I'm not the attorney in the room, Attorney Cole is here, but I will highlight the 90-day sort of opt-out clause, and for lack of a better term, that if either party disagrees with the way in which it's flowing, that there's an option to sort of cancel the program. I hope that prior to that, there are several discussions on how to address concerns or address some items that aren't being, if one party disagrees with. There will be ongoing discussions at sort of command level between myself and the administrator or one of my lieutenants and school board staff with respect to how things are going. I have that expectation that happens. And admittedly, I can't speak for my predecessor necessarily, but I know it was stated in public forum, but by my colleague, the chief of Cottage Grove Police, that there had not been conversations that took place between the police chief and the administration of the school board. I think I know that that'll change. And I think you know me a little bit by now, Alder, that I just have a different operating philosophy when it comes to communication and ongoing evaluation and continuous improvement. And so the answer to your question is, I think I cannot speak for the school board, but I know that there was mention of policy change with respect to how they would proceed in certain situations where normally they would likely tap an SRO to say, hey, we need your help with this. So procedurally, I think that there will be some changes in-house. But on the flip side of that, I have done some directing as well and given orders to our SRO that under certain situations, it shall not be a law enforcement outcome. Behaviors that are typically addressed and should be addressed by the school shall remain the school's decision. And just because we are there and just because we're present, now mind you, this is a shift in how we normally operate, because in the community, typically speaking, if the police is called to an emergency situation or to address a dispute, we are then thereby ultimately responsible as to the outcome. That sort of shift in thought is essential and something that our current SRO, or future SRO again, is very much on board with. After several direct discussions with me in talking through the scenarios. But I think that we're at the point where the school district and the school board is also comfortable with some of the changes that I've implemented and some of the directives that I've made moving forward. And again, we've agreed that we will have ongoing evaluation and discussions should there be any concerns that may rise. And I don't expect this to be sort of a flawless process, right? I expect there to be instances in which we're going to have to come together and meet and debrief on certain situations. One of the things I discussed, I promise I'll stop talking. So one of the things I discussed as well with administration is this concept of sort of evaluating and debriefing every call or every circumstance in which we were involved. What went well? What could we have done differently? What can we do next time to reach a better outcome? And if everything went well, great, but still let's think of what else we could have done to get to a better outcome. And that's something that the police department is starting to do internally, but I discussed that we should have sort of group involvement in those discussions and those evaluations after every single incident in which we're part of. And again, just because we're there, just because we're consulted, I don't expect there should not be, for the vast majority of time, a law enforcement outcome. That sort of answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Alderwood.
Yeah, there's definitely some very, very good language in the MOU that I applaud about essentially not having the SRO be a disciplinary arm of the district. There's some other language that potentially could, create an exception to that. But I guess my point or the comment I wanted to offer is that this is going to be a shift in the patterns of behavior by the school district staff and the SRO of how things have been handled in the past. And one concern I have is that it's easier to keep doing what you've done, and so we just need to make sure that, and maybe the debriefing that you talk about will help with that, to make sure that we're following the intent of this agreement. I mean, we have, and the school board has, I don't know if the teachers, how they'll be made aware of it. So.
Yes, Alder, thank you for that. And I can tell you that we've done some professional role-playing, the SRO and I, in situations in which he may be tapped by a teacher, and that's contrary to the order that I've given him, that it not be the primary responsibility of the SRO, that he instead say, hey, my chief gave me orders. I can't really be, the determination, I can't get the determination in this particular situation based on X, Y, and Z. I can help you get there, and I can help offer some insight and maybe give you an opinion, but this is one of those things in which I've been ordered shall not be something that I can make a determination on. And so that gives him a little bit more, he can relax a little bit, put that on me as chief, but staff will need that from time to time, and that's why there's going to be a little bit more hands-on, not day-to-day necessarily, but there'll be a little bit more involvement from a command level with respect to the programming there and our involvement in the high school.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
No.
Any other questions? Alder Goldberg?
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate what Alder Wood said. I do appreciate the shift in thinking and language. I also really appreciate the enhanced communication. I think that will help kind of move things in that direction that you're envisioning. I don't know if I missed it, but I didn't see anywhere, so I'm wondering if you could clarify. Does the SRO attend sporting events?
Yes.
They do, okay.
So not all, but some. So major sporting events, the school requests the SRO to attend.
Okay.
So home football game is a perfect example.
Okay.
Prom sometimes is another example. Graduation would be another.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we will move on to item 2B, consideration of resolution 21-9-2508, terminating contract for Spring Haven Pagoda roof replacement. Landmark Commission, this is start for immediate action. A motion to suspend the rules is in order.
Move to suspend the rules and take this item out of order.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion,
Move approval.
All second.
Good evening, everybody. Just as a way of a little bit of background, I'll just run through the memo just to introduce the discussion here. So back on May 15th, the City Council approved the award of the Spring Haven Pagoda Rehabilitation Project. That was to replace the pagoda roof with a new replica roof of exactly the same style. A lot of that was based upon a 2016 historic preservation report that stated that the columns, the foundation, everything beneath the roof effectively of the existing pagoda was in good shape and would be capable of supporting a new roof. Project timing of the stone bridge improvements as well as the pagoda meant that the improvements actually began before the pagoda project could. What that meant was it actually uncovered from excavation around the pagoda, from grading that was taking place there, that the pagoda foundations and columns were in much worse condition than expected. This was confirmed by a staff site visit with a engineer, as well as August 11th Landmarks Commission meeting. You can see from some of the photographs that are included in the packet, the steel dowels are corroded and not embedded into the stone foundation. It's really the intersection there of the columns and the foundation that's the biggest concern. Quite a few cracks across the pagoda as well. Again, with the concern that the base of the pagoda would not be able to support this roof. As such, the Landmarks Commission on the August 11th meeting had a formal motion made to the council, to City Council, recommending the termination of that contract, along with the possible removal of the structure while equipment is on site. That motion passed unanimously. The thinking there being that whilst there's heavy equipment on site, there's still just a couple weeks left of that project, as I understand it, that the equipment could be used to take out the pagoda. It would be a more efficient use of funds and be able to sort of have a reset. Certainly the intention there is, the intent of the commission is to redesign and rebuild a pagoda in the future, but it would just be sort of an opportunity here, particularly with the park potentially reopening soon, to take away a liability as well. There's some concern about just the structural integrity. So you can see included in the packet there is a letter from Patrick Egan. He is the engineer that designed the roof project. He sort of gave an opinion on the current condition of the pagoda, And that's all included as are photographs and some cost estimates as well. Again, they're just cost estimates, but certainly there's some efficiencies to be had here. And it's his belief that a full replacement of the pagoda could see some efficiencies over just replacing the roof itself. With that, city staff recommends the termination of the pagoda contract, the roof contract, as well as authorization to remove the existing pagoda whilst equipment is on site. Thank you.
Questions? Comments? Alder Kerr?
A quick question and a comment. When we did the scans of the roof, did that also include the columns so that, if we do decide to rebuild this, will we have enough of a map to be able to make it as close as possible to what was there?
So my understanding, the most recent drawings that were done, the sort of intersection, the column design has been taken into account, but certainly that would be something if this were to proceed in the next few days, I would go back to the engineer and make sure that we have all the information we need prior to any removal. So.
And then my comment would just be that if we do proceed with removal, I'd like to see us reach out to the press to make sure that they are aware that this removal is not due to anything that was done in the park. It wasn't a result of construction issue. I just have concerns of the community being outraged. So.
Alder Wood?
Yeah. But I mean, it's unfortunate that it's happened this way. As I said at finance, I mean, it's about a 120-year-old concrete structure, so it's not too surprising. It's it's beyond the end of its useful life. But I do think this gives us an opportunity to decide, if we want to put a pagoda back and the same or something a little different or whatever. Did have one question. And since Bill Cole is here, I might as well ask him. Are we subject to any penalties for terminating a contract?
I don't have hope you can hear me. I don't have the contract in front of me. I'm not aware of any penalty provisions. We would be liable for any costs the contractor has incurred to date. I know staff was very proactive in reaching out to the contractor and at least advising them of this issue. So I think we will have some costs I believe the contractor has prepared forms already for the roof, for the concrete pour. Those costs we would be liable for, and any other costs that they've incurred to date, which Doug would know better, but I think at this point they're fairly minimal.
That's correct, and thank you for bringing that up. Yes.
Any other questions? Alder Goldberg?
Thank you. I did want to note that several people have asked me, why can't those cracks be repaired? And we could not match that aggregate exactly, and so it would look like a concrete patch job, and it just wouldn't be aesthetically pleasing, and it also wouldn't stand up over time. So just to make sure folks are clear on that. I did also want to mention that one of the architects on our committee mentioned that best practices in these situations today is not an exact replication. So we are going to discuss this at length for the next few months, and I think we should think about this as an opportunity to explore other ideas, and maybe something will look better than the pagoda or work differently, or so hopefully people can keep an open mind on that as we explore those ideas. I do fully understand and feel the disappointment that the community may feel about the pagoda, because, as Alder Wood said, it's 120 years old. It's been in Monona for a very long time, before we were Monona. So, I hope we can see this as an opportunity for something potentially better. I'm wondering if there is going to be a cost to us for removal to Joe Daniels. Do you know that at this point?
I'm sure there would be some sort of cost. It would be something we would need to most likely draft up a short contract. Whether it's with this being a termination, it's probably not a change order, but just something with them on site. Probably just draft something up, but I expect it would be fairly minimal for the cost.
Great. Thank you.
And I'll just add on that, sorry, thank you. I'll just add on that note that they do recommend that removing the entire pagoda structure will be a cost-saving opportunity for the city versus patching or doing it piecemeal while construction is currently underway on the site. So something to keep in mind as well.
I just have a question. Does anybody know why, when that was put there, why it was a pagoda and not another piece of artwork? It just seems like an interesting thing to have there in a community that, I mean, that doesn't seem oriental, that why you wouldn't have something Native American or something.
I'm not too sure of the origins. I think it was almost to sort of delineate and to protect the spring and to offer some sort of some cover for it, but maybe other council members have more detail on that. But I'm not too sure of the origins or the reasoning behind it.
I've heard that same question a lot, and I haven't heard either.
Interesting.
Yes, the mystery continues.
I wasn't actually here when this happened.
Sure.
I don't think you were either, Kathy. It was owned by Judge Keyes at the time, so apparently Judge Keyes had like pagodas. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay, I was just curious. So are there any other questions? Do we need a roll call on this?
Are we changing our contract? Yes, I think we should have a roll call.
Okay.
Okay, Alder Wood,
Aye.
Alder Core,
Aye.
Alder Goforth,
Aye.
Alder Groupie,
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
We'll move to item C, consideration of resolution 21-9-2510, awarding 5-year contract for city transit services to First Student Inc.
Yes, thanks. We went, our first contract with First Student is up this year. It was a 5-year contract. That's 2021 is the last year of that. So we put an RFP out, received 2 bids, First Student and Mobility Transformation Inc. Came back for a 5-year bid. First Student was $1,519,552. I think my glasses over 5 years. Mobility Transformation Inc. was $2,311,488. So the difference over 5 years is $791,000. So the commission approved First Student, but they are going to have a meeting next week. They wanted to come back to kind of explain some of their DEI training. So they're going to sit down and talk to them about that, and then they'll do official approval at the next meeting for that. The First Students will be used buses. They did not give us a bid for new buses. We did ask for the next meeting too, also what a new bus would cost. So that is also information they're going to give us for their consideration. So if anyone has any questions or concerns?
Just a comment, the new bus exploration was also specifically for an electric or hybrid bus to try to get more in line with the fleet standards that exist for other departments in the city currently. And also just gratitude to the committee for just a very, I think, productive conversation about the RFP, surrounding the RFP, in addition to the members of the community who took the transit survey that we disseminated in a couple of the city e-newsletters, just to give us input about how we can better cater to the community, involve more riders, get more people interested in transit, period, and just really appreciated the feedback. So,
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I'll just add that I think it's 139 people have taken the transit survey, and so we definitely appreciate that input. A lot of the input was, more service hours, more stops, more frequent service, and a lot of comments asking us to join with Madison Metro. And so I just wanted to make sure folks know, because we've certainly considered that. We wish that was more easily achieved than it is. A couple of the complications there are like we don't have a regional transit authority, and so combining services is really challenging. And number one, if we switch to Madison Metro, I know they are reconfiguring all of their routes for 2023, but I have a friend who lives in an apartment on Monona Drive, and it takes her an hour and 15 minutes to get to UW campus, where our bus takes about 15 minutes. So there are some sacrifices, and then there's of course the cost. So in Fitchburg's experience, if we remember, I think it was a year or two ago, they used Madison Metro. They had approved their operating budget, and then Madison Metro came to them and said that they made a mistake and they needed to add $150,000, I believe it was, onto those services. So those are some of the things. If we did do that, we do lose some control and could achieve some challenges there. So just wanted to make sure people were clear on that, because we did see so many comments on that, and it's something we hear so frequently.
I just had a question about the rider. I mean, we all know the ridership is down dramatically because of COVID. If it doesn't pick up, what's the answer?
We've talked a little bit about how to adjust schedule and routes to better accommodate, those more heavily trafficked hours of the day when the buses are in service. But I would say, maybe Mark, you can speak to this too. I think ridership I would say that we're getting back on track as far as numbers going up, particularly on the Express. It also should be noted that ridership was at an all-time high before COVID, as a result of I think a pretty dedicated marketing campaign by the Transit Commission prior to starting in 2011 and on. So even though numbers are down, I think it's legitimate to have the conversations about where we go next, but also to remember that we were starting from a place of the highest use and ridership on the bus that we had in the transit history prior to COVID. So. Correct.
Yeah, and I think Molly kind of hit on. We have been talking about it. If it doesn't improve, we did talk about with reduced loops or hours, so for some cost savings there. So we have talked about those measures. We want to kind of give it a chance to see what happens after here with the COVID. See if with the vaccines, start to see some riders come back. The thing I didn't touch on is the Monona Lift. That actually is running about 80% pre-COVID. The seniors are still using it as pretty much as it was, 80% of what they were using it before. But they're actually coming back even more now. I think probably back after this month we'll be close to almost 100% as rides for the lift. So the seniors are definitely using the service. It is taking a long time for the Express to come back, but the vaccine was just 3 or 4 months ago. So we are kind of waiting and see what happens, and we do talk about all the time in our meetings what can we do after this. So we definitely are watching it.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Just a comment on that. I guess Madison Metro, their ridership numbers got hammered too, and even though they were keeping, they were clean, the buses were cleaner than they probably have ever been, but people just didn't want to ride the bus, and so I don't know where their numbers are coming back, but the point is, I guess we're just one of many transit providers that face the same COVID issues, and we're going to see how it comes back.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, we'll move down to item B, consideration of resolution 21-9-2511, authorizing increasing the water utility billing clerk position to a full-time position. This is start for immediate action.
Move to take this item out of order.
I'll second.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion to approve?
No, you just.
I'll second.
You moved before.
Oh, sorry.
So the reason why we asked this to be started is our utility billing clerk just recently put a notice in. Her last day is actually Thursday. And something we've been talking about internally is to increase that position. We were going back in the 2022 budget and asked to increase those hours to basically full-time. There's a couple of reasons. A lot of it has been growing. When I first got here, the position was full-time, and we did cut it back to a little over half-time just because the workload wasn't there. And we initiated disconnection notices and some other stuff that we started doing we weren't doing before, and we needed more time, so we kind of bumped that up to 0.88 FTEs. And now we're kind of looking to go full-time. One, because of, with the monthly billing, does have a little bit of an impact. And even before that, I think last year, especially during election years, two of the major election years, the governor's elections and the president election, there's not a lot of work that's being done. There's a lot of coverage issues we run into, and especially in those years. Wanted to help out with the receptionist. When the billing clerk leaves at 3, basically kind of the reception has to do a lot of the utility work, do kind of the calls, look stuff up between like 3 to 5. And her stuff is kind of, she wants to help out, she needs to help with the election, so, she's putting a lot more work on, a lot more stress on her. It's not really part of her job description, too. It's kind of one other reason. But, especially too with the, for the disconnection and monthly, we still have, with the new monthly billing, we thought it's the time to bump that up to full time. And it is also utilities, so it's her salary is paid through the water utility, sewer utility, and the stormwater utility. So it doesn't go through the property tax levy. It is an increase, but it doesn't go through the actual city property tax levy.
Questions?
I just wanted to kind of check in about how the monthly billing has been going and what sort of community feedback, if any, you'd received about that. I also know that we had talked at length about the potential for an online payment system and what changes or ease of use we could do to improve that system. Can you comment on those things, Mark?
Yeah, as far as the monthly billing, internally, it took us, there's a lot of bumps, hiccups trying to get the first billing out, just going from monthly to from quarterly down to monthly, because everybody's on different monthly cycles. So that took internally it took a lot of time, but we did get it out. We actually kind of had a mixed review. Some people like the quarterly, but we've had a lot of people say, especially the people who were part of the disconnection, they were having a hard time because they like the budget. It's easier for them to budget, and they would fall behind, and they would get caught up, and all of a sudden another bill is getting there, and they're falling behind. So those people have said they actually like it. So it's kind of been mixed. I think it's actually more favorable that I've seen calls. Every once in a while we do get a couple calls, and they want us to go back to quarterly. But the majority of people, they can kind of budget, and they can keep on looking at their water bills on a monthly basis. We do have an online system right now. It's called PSN for your online payments. We have about 800 people that are signed up for that, so they don't get an actual postcard in the mail anymore. They just kind of get it online. You can sign up for that. The majority of those people get it. They don't get the postcard anymore. It's automatically gets sent to the website. So it's 800 out of 3,000. So we're seeing more people calling to get that set up because they just got that second monthly bill. So, and we also established kind of a due date. One of the issues we had was there was no the due date was changing every month. So the due date is always the 22nd now. So that's something that we can, it's always going to be the 22nd. So that helps to, when you set up your payment, you have a due date. Because sometimes it's 21st, the 20th, or the 23rd. So we found to use a date that we can consistently use for your bills. But so far, other than a couple of people saying they want to go back to the monthly or quarterly billing, it's been pretty well received. A lot of people who call use the Iron Water. I don't know if you guys use the Iron Water system. So you can watch your water usage daily. We've had a lot of people who call and say, I didn't use this much water, and we'll go on there and we'll check. And you can see that there's a consistent flow, even at 2 o'clock in the morning, it just flows through, right? Or you can say, you can tell, you're not using water at this time, or you're using it time, you must have been watering or something like that, or during the day. So it's helped us a lot. I think it's educated a lot of people using that. Surprisingly, a lot of people call and say they like it, so that system.
We discovered a leak using that, so.
That's all.
Is there a fee to pay online?
Oh, there is not a fee if you use your checking account. There is one still that uses a credit card system, but there's no fee for credit cards, or for your checking account.
Good.
Are there any other questions? Need a roll call on this one. Okay.
Alder Wood?
Aye.
Alder Core?
Aye.
Alder Goldborn?
Aye.
Alder Groupie?
Aye.
Motion carries. We move to item C, consideration of resolution 21-9-2512, amending the capital budget for Winnequa Park paved path.
Just a point of information is Director Anderson's coming up. This is one item that we talked about at the Finance Committee. If the council was willing and interested in entertaining it as a single read, if you were going to approve it, just for the contractor standpoint of getting somebody on site to complete the work while the concrete plants are still open. But we can talk about that in a moment.
Do you want a motion now or do you want?
If somebody from the council is willing to give one, otherwise we can talk about it.
I'll move to suspend the rules and take this out of order.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll move. Do we need to move yet? Move approval.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor? I'm sure all of you are aware the path around the skate park is gravelled, and that was a result of some remediation work done on the lagoon dredging project. So the lagoon dredging project was done in 2019. Some wrap-up, follow-up with DNR indicated that more remediation work had to be done in the area from the lagoon to the skate park. So there was a capping of some of the soil contaminants that were there, which resulted in the engineer's recommendation saying that if we were going to have a path there again, that you would put the gravel down then. That project, Public Works staff did last fall in 2020 after our capital budget process was already in full swing. So this was known about for a year, was not put in this year's capital budget because we wanted to just see how the projects would play out, mainly the large road construction project on Sylvan and then Stonebridge Park. So this recommendation came June, Park and Rec Board to repave the path. We had originally hoped to maybe do the entire section around the skate park from the pool to connect up to the newer section at the community center. But this recommendation tonight is just to do the gravel path from the Winnequa Road entrance of the skate park around the skate park to connect into the existing path. Acknowledging that the entire path from the end of Greenway Road to the skate park is in poor condition and will need to be replaced at some point, but this is an effort to make the path usable not only for this fall but also during the winter as well. And I believe Finance Director Hotaker indicated the funding sources from some cost savings from 2021 capital projects that are already completed.
Questions, comments? Alder Groupie?
The senior commission talked about this at our last meeting on the 1st, and there was a lot of enthusiasm and gratitude about the potential of this going forward, just because of the number of programs and proximity to the senior center that would allow for more ease of mobility for a lot of the people who participate in senior center programs. One question that was brought up at this meeting was the potential for permeable pavement, and I just wanted to ask if that had been considered or if it was a cost-effective potential for that. Just wanted to ask about it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, no, because permeable paving, you need a fair amount of, the sub-base has to be clear stone for up to 2 feet in depth. So we've already laid down that a dense coarse crushed rock, and so it'd have to be non-permeable, regular asphalt.
Any other questions or comments?
Alder Core.
Oh, sorry. Alder Crowe.
So this is a portion of the path. Is there a plan in the Winnicott master plan that's, I know, being discussed to extend that, or other plans for that?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, we've been asking input from people about, and we've had several variations of master plans for the north side of Winnicott Park, all including pedestrian paths through the park. So we did add a little Y going along the lagoon for future expansion to connect up to the Fireman's Park Shelter, which I think is fairly logical, where people would want to be walking to connect up from Winnicott Road into Fireman's. Our survey results, I can report, we had 550 roughly survey results for the Park and Open Space Plan. Those will be presented at the September, this next week, at the Parks and Recreation Board meeting. We'll get some of the input, and but yes, ideally both sections will get connected in the future.
Any other questions? Alder Wood?
Just wanted to follow up on that, reconstructing the piece of the path that's behind the pool and along the school property. We don't have to wait for the master plan to do that, right? Because, I mean, it's at the edges of the park anyway.
I would agree with that, Alderwood. Yeah, I think given the condition of that, given the amount of pedestrian students using that path on a daily basis, I think it will be a high priority in our 2023 capital budget request.
Thank you.
Alder Goldberg?
I was just going to ask, will this project go out for bid?
No, we have a quote that's less than the threshold.
Alder Crowe?
Do you have an estimate as to what that additional section of path would be to do? Ballpark, I mean.
The whole thing?
If we did the whole thing, how much would it cost?
$150,000.
Okay.
Give or take. Depends how much we involve the engineers.
Who needs engineers?
Any other questions? If not, roll call is in order.
Alder Groupie?
Aye.
Alder Wood?
Aye.
Alder Kerr?
Aye.
Alder Goldberg?
Aye.
Motion passes. We move to item F, convene in closed session under Wisconsin Statute 19.85, paren 1, paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
1, 6, and there we go.
We're live. So we will now move to item H, consideration of resolution 21-9-2509, authorizing a full-time Parks and Recreation position. This is not starred.
It is not started.
We don't need immediate action. So are there any further questions or comments?
I guess my question is there any reason not to, I know the mayor has been trying not to approve things on first read, so if it can wait, I guess we'll wait.
Other than I'm not going to be here for the next council meeting, so Administrator Gatto will be in charge of the national conference.
And I'm fine with whatever direction the council will go. And just, I guess, a point of information for the audience, this is a request to increase an existing part-time position to a full-time position, covered through revenue generated from the after-school program. So it's not creating a new position, it's taking an existing position and increasing it to a full-time position.
And how many hours does that position, how many hours are we going from what to what?
Going from about 25 hours a week to 40, on average throughout the year. Summer is more than fall and spring.
Okay.
I'll move to suspend the rules and take this out of order.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Just roll call because it's budget. Is there discussion?
I think it would be important to just make the point that this, given revenues from the position, it won't be increasing the levy limit or, putting an undue burden on our finances at this time in budget season. And I think that would be important to point out to the community.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, would clerk call the roll?
Alder Goforth?
Aye.
Alder Groupie?
Aye.
Alder Wood?
Aye.
Alder Corp?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
We'll move to item H, reports of committees, commissions, boards, mayor, administrator, attorney, department managers. Alder Groupie?
I mentioned this, but senior committee met last week, and we also did a tour beforehand of San Damiano with some of the members of the committee, which was very well received. I think they thought it was a lot of fun to see the Frank Alice house and just get that great view from the second floor of the house. So one thing that we had discussed as a potential budgetary item that needed to be suspended for the senior center budget was a vestibule that either would be sort of permanently or impermanently placed during the winter hours by the senior center entrance on the lower level of the community center to prevent loss of heat or influx of cold air during the winter months when people are coming in and out. And we had just decided that based on the estimate from the few local companies that we could find to potentially provide a bid for us, we were putting it on the back burner. However, at the recommendation of one of the members of the committee, I reached out to the Sun Prairie shop teachers, and there is a class that needs a project for this year. And so they are going to work toward, we haven't worked out the final details yet, but it sounds like an arrangement, a collaboration can be made between the senior center and, the Monona Grove school teachers, shop teachers, to create the vestibule with students from their shop class that would be completed in May of 2022. And so while it won't be ready for this winter, we're looking forward to just, paying for the cost of materials and then having the labor all done by, local community members, students, and in collaboration with the school district. So kind of an exciting development there.
Thank you. And I'm going to go back to you because I skipped over the update discussion for diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So,
I guess so. Since our last conversation, I guess I would say in the senior committee meeting also we talked about just the idea of collaborating with other city departments on making sure that, individuals with disabilities who are older are included in different conversations about the senior center and how we can make improvements to make it a more welcoming place to all people, differently abled or, from different walks of life. So we just talked about that as a potential goal for the senior center moving forward in the next year. It's just greater collaboration and discussion with other city departments.
Thank you. Are there any other updates on the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts? Alder Kerr?
I will say this one because Director Kleinfeld is here as well, and he could probably give a little better update. But the library board has approved changing the signage within the library to have both Spanish and English signage, and I believe that we've ordered it, and it should be arriving soon. He's nodding yes. Anything else we want to add?
Can I speak here, or do you want me to go up?
Sorry, I put you on the spot. I didn't prep you ahead of time.
That's fine. So yes, regarding the signage, we will be having new signs that's highlighting the collection in other areas of the library. It is going to be bilingual, Spanish and English. Regarding equity and diversity for the library, I'll just quick say that we have our anti-racism initiative that is starting in September and going through a year. We have funding from ALA that we are going to do a community read for adults, teens, and children. It was going to be kicking off September 11th. However, due to Delta, we have pushed that back to May and swapped it for them having programs dealing in anti-racism, as well as linking to other anti-racist speakers and programs that are happening in the Metro Madison area. And then we will be having discussions around that being done virtually. And then any programming we do have will be outside of the building, again, due to Delta.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other council reports on Brian?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. So the ad hoc work group on diversity, equity, and inclusion has met 3 times and really had some great discussion, brainstorming facilitated by Karen Harry from Nehemiah. They have decided, just because of schedules, we're going to switch from an evening meeting we're going to try 3:30. On the 16th will be our next meeting. And if that time works, then we'll probably move our every other Thursday meetings to 3:30. If that works for the group. And then we talked previously about enrolling the council members as individuals in the Nehemiah's upcoming Justified Anger Black History for a New Day course. If you have not taken the course and you would like to take the course, I'd be happy, or the city would be happy to cover the cost of your enrollment. The one thing I need to check with Nehemiah on is if they've got other, what's the right term? Asynchronous, there we go, asynchronous courses that are going on that you could join onto, because the course that they run is on Monday evenings, which obviously wouldn't work for all of you here. So if you're interested, please just shoot me an email or let me know, and I'll work with the folks over at Nehemiah to get you signed up.
Any other council reports on diverse? Any staff members have any reports that they wish to make on diversity, equity, or inclusion? Okay, we'll go on to committee reports. Alder, go for it.
Sure. The Tourism Commission met. We meet on a quarterly basis, and we met last week. We are fine-tuning our grant application for room tax dollars. Our next meeting will be in October. It's looking like we'll have about $50,000 for distribution for events that generate room nights, marketing outside the region to attract more hotel stays and benefit the local economy. I did want to mention for Plan Commission, the development at the corner that's been proposed at the corner of West Dean and Monona is scheduled, I believe, still to come to Plan Commission in September. Is that correct, Brian? Do you know offhand? I know that's what we were told last, so I know a lot of people were following that, and I think it's scheduled for our next Plan Commission meeting.
It might be the 28th.
Okay. So stay tuned, folks. Keep an eye on that agenda on the city's website, mymonona.com. And I think that wraps up my role. Thanks.
Alder Wood.
Parks Board meets next Tuesday, as does License Review, and we still have an opening on the License Review Committee. That's it.
Honaker?
No report.
Staff? Fire chief, do you have a report?
Yes, I'm going to keep it very brief tonight. I was told 3 minutes, so I'm going to try to maintain that. So, see, 2.5. 2.5, you can try that. All right.
And go.
Well, good evening, everyone. Nice to see everybody in person. This is my first in-person council meeting in a year or so. It's nice to see everybody. I have just a couple of things. The first big thing I've got is to say thank you to Chief Cheney Austin. Tonight's training over at the fire department, we've got one of his police officers working on de-escalation training with all of our staff. We want to make sure we're all on the same page when it comes to some critical incidents, that we're all talking the same language, we're all doing the same things to keep everybody safe. I can't speak high enough about Officer Flora. He's doing a great job. That's one of the phone calls that I took during closed session. And that was actually one of my staff telling me what a great job it was having that training in case I wasn't coming back tonight. So really nice on that. We've been doing a lot of collaborative things, which are great. 10 applications for volunteer coming in. We're actually having a meeting in 2 weeks to work through them, and 3 of them are actually City of Monona folks, which are fabulous. We're getting some local folks here. Couple things I want to make a comment about my volunteers. I always try and make comments. Staff heard this morning. We had a big call down in McFarland last week, middle of the day, middle of the week. We managed to get our ladder down to McFarland with 5 volunteers on it. They were there for 3.5 hours working with McFarland on a big structure fire. And during that time, we covered 2 EMS calls here in the city with our full-time staff and 4 more volunteers. So it's been really busy. You'll see in my packet how busy we've been.
Chief, can I make a request?
Certainly.
That you consider when we get volunteers, new volunteers that join the service, if they're willing, and if you're willing, and if it's convenient, I think to bring them to a council meeting to introduce them.
You have already read my mind. We're already starting that. You'll see our 2 new lieutenants who were just promoted. I unofficially promoted them tonight in front of everybody. We'll have a full promotional next month. They're actually going to come to a council meeting to be introduced, and they'll also come to public safety as well.
Thank you.
Last couple things. September 11th, we've been reached out to. Somebody's going to be providing meals for all of our staff on September 11th. They're actually doing all of Dane County. Any first responder working, they're providing meals. So both police and fire here are covered in that. We're also working with police and Ryan. We got approached by Reach a Child, which provides books and bags for children when we respond to incidents that involve children. They were asking if we were willing to carry those on our trucks, which we are. And we're actually going to work with Ryan to boost our library stuff as well within those bags. So we're going to try and do a cross collaboration between Reach a Child and the library and the police department and ourselves to try and get more outreach to the kiddos during calls. Last thing I'm going to say is I have good news tonight. Friday I got an email. We applied for Assistance to Firefighters grant last year for new SCBAs. We've been trying since 2011. We got awarded that as of Friday. It's a total of $212,000 in federal dollars. Requires a match from the city of about $10,000, which is the cost of 2 SCBAs. So I went ahead and accepted that with the city administrator on Friday. It'll be coming to a future council agenda in the near future to formally accept it and recognize it and figure out how we're going to pay for it. But, really nice, very competitive this year, so we're pretty happy with getting that. So that's all I got.
We thank you for participating in the great golf ball drop.
Absolutely. We want to participate in all the community stuff. So anything we can do, if you've got a community event, reach out. I'm happy to come out. So is my staff.
Rec Director?
You know, I didn't submit my report, so I'll just do it verbally since I'm here. All right. This Thursday, Beer Garden, second to last, Schluter Park, 5 to 8 p.m. Sound Billies, so it's going to be a great time if you can make it. Stonebridge Park, the concrete sidewalk was started to get poured today down at the lakefront. So I would assume probably by the end of the week, middle of next week, things will be shaping up, finished landscaping. So we're hitting the end stretch there with Stonebridge, starting to look very nice at different angles. I just wanted to, similar to Chief McMullen, we're getting close to budget time. We look at a lot of ones and zeros and Excel spreadsheets and numbers, and makes my brain hurt. But this summer particularly, we hire over 100 seasonals between the parks, the pool, the recreation department, and the effort that was put forth this summer was just awesome. It was hot from day one. We ripped the Band-Aid off with COVID on June 1st with the opening of the pool, and we were flooded with people. And it was really an extraordinary effort by our staff. And we don't always recognize the 16 and 17-year-olds that work for us and grew up in Monona and participated in our programs and come back to work for us. And the park seasonals that come back from year to year and mow the grass and clean the bathrooms. And it was a heavy use year. It was a heavy programmed year. And we had very few incidents. The pool, I always say, it's a great year if we don't have a tragic incident at the pool. We put over 50,000 people in the pool. And so that's number one. Number two, we were open probably 95% of the times that we had scheduled. Weather wasn't an issue. The programs that we were able to put on in the rec department through new and innovative program ideas from our full-time staff to the implementation of our seasonals was outstanding, including full-day summer camp for over 42 kids. This community is thriving. We have people wanting to move here, and I just wanted to congratulate those staff that really put forth an outstanding effort. We're looking forward to a great fall and winter as we kind of close the door on summer. We have one more beer garden. The fall programs are in full effect. If you got a chance tonight to go by Fireman's Park, probably about 100 kids and their families with our soccer program. So we're still going through it, but we're very excited about the next couple months. So if you see any of those kids, just give them an at a boy, at a girl, at a kid, because they really did a great job for us. Thank you.
Please, Chief.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge the ongoing collaboration with Monona Police and Monona Fire, as well as our other agency partners. It's been really great to collaborate with all the agencies with the police department, and I think our officers and staff really appreciate the collaboration as well, and I look forward to continuing that trend moving forward. I want to cover feel-good stuff, good news, and then I'll cover some things I think that are worth discussion. The outreach committee continues to happen with the police department. Thank you all those who participated and helped organize the bike rodeo at Nuestro Mundo. It was a well-attended event. Some of you were there working and staffing and helping the kids and their parents out. Thank you. We're looking at other opportunities to expand that and to continue that in Monona. And so I welcome any ideas from folks as we work in partnership with others to make those opportunities happen within our city. The police department represented the city in a refugee and first responder picnic that was hosted by the city of Madison. Really good connections. I actually sat with a family who recently moved from Iraq and shared their experiences, but I also talked a lot about my new place of employment and the opportunities here at Monona and some of the city parks, Jake, and other opportunities that we have here, including some of the outstanding food options that we have here in our city. So I encourage them to, and others who I interacted with as an ambassador of our great city, to stop on by and guarantee that we were a welcoming community. Just a plug, which is very important for a great cause that's coming up in a couple weeks, the Ann Ahern Run Walk for Diversity and Inclusion, which is September 18th. Just received a big oversized check today from WPS, and that organization, thank you again for giving $5,000 to that worthy cause, the Run Walk. We've received several folks signed up for the walk portion and the run, and so I encourage others to consider doing the same and or donate to this great scholarship fund named after a great person. So that is September 18th at 1 o'clock. I can tell you staff and officers at Monona PD working hard every day. I see them on all shifts. I read most of them, the reports I can get my hands on in the time I have. And I know that their dedication and their compassion is there. What I will say, and I'll speak on one point. It's my goal as police chief and as an agent charged with helping to ensure public safety in our community, as are all of us here, to report on things that are unfortunate. And as much as I try to keep Monona out of the news for unfortunate events, it's my duty to report them. And so one of the things that I'll make mention of that has been published in a press release that I think is important, and as me as a city employee, a department staff, or head of department, and as police chief, is to report acts of vandalism that occur in our city, particularly when the acts of vandalism are done so in the name of intolerance, and to say that those acts will not be tolerated by me, your police chief, by me as an employee of the city of Monona, and by me as a member of this community. They will not be tolerated. And so what my hope is that we can come together as a community with that same feeling, with that same motivation, and try to come up with some sort of resolution. Number one, see if we can educate the individual or individuals who may be responsible and potentially create opportunities for restorative justice, right, in which we can repair the harm that's been done by the vandalism. And it's not just in this case in particular with the vandalism of signs that read messaging that calls for acceptance, calls for understanding, calls for justice. It is the fact that the damage is not just damage to a piece of cardboard or a piece of paper. There's some monetary value behind that, but it's the emotional and scarring damage that comes with the acts of vandalism. And what I will say is that whomever the culprit is, you did not win, you will not win, and that we as a community will not tolerate that type of behavior. And then second, I want to comment on a pretty gruesome call that our police officers and our fire and EMS staff responded to over the weekend. An unfortunate event and an offense that happened in our community in which an individual member of our community was harmed by a family member. And so I'm happy to report that the victim is recovering, but we came close to not having a community member with us over the weekend. And so I want to say that although that incident is an isolated incident and that there was a relationship and that there was a targeted victim, I still want to condemn the act. I still want to offer any and all support I can to the victim, to the victim's family, to the community, to the neighbors and residents who were impacted by what was a very traumatic call, and ask you to reach out if you've not talked to a member of the police department or fire department and you're struggling. There are resources available in Dane County to assist you, and we are one of the facilitators of that resource if you need it. But physical violence of any kind will not be tolerated by this police department, will not be tolerated by this police chief, and will not be tolerated by this community. And I feel comfortable, hopefully, representing this body in making those very strong statements and speaking out against both of those acts. So I promise to lead a team who's very dedicated and committed to providing high-quality service for all in our community. I promise to report on violations that I think are critical and important to the community, that the community cares about. And I promise to keep you updated on all the wonderful feel-good stuff that's important for healing a community after what has been a very challenging couple of years for us. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does there our library director? Well, he's going up there. I have to tell you.
Steps in.
I have to tell you all how wonderful it is to have you here talking to us in person. I mean, I've sat here many nights when that side of the table is empty, and what you have to say is valuable and interesting, and it is appreciated by all of us at this table.
And now, Ryan.
All right, I'll keep it brief. 2 hours, we're all going to be out of here. I already mentioned the anti-racist work the library is doing. We are also doing this internally. Staff continue to have professional development offered, and they continue to participate with vigor. This is very dear to many of the staff members, recognizing both how important it is for the library staff to improve and then also to provide what we can to the community. And this will continue to grow. And there is no end in sight, which is both good and bad, in my opinion. But the important thing is the staff are dedicated to continue to do this, as well as the library board, very dedicated to do this. One thing I neglected to put in my report, which you may have seen or not seen because I also was very late with it, is that the library board approved values for the public library that will go underneath its mission. Those libraries are passionately advocate for literacy and lifelong learning, provides free access to information and services for a diverse population through a variety of formats, supports, cultivates, and celebrates our staff, works every day to ensure trust, accountability, and privacy to our patrons, creates a welcoming environment for all that promotes and practices our commitment to equity, inclusion, and diversity. And so those were officially approved, and those are values that we will continue to work with every day. Also with their staff, we are working on a lot of de-escalation training. Staff on a daily basis deals with the community, which is why they do what they do, and they love the community. However, there are members of the community that come in and they may have not a great day, whether it's that day or they may be having a very hard time in their life. And interactions can sometimes get tense over the smallest thing. And it's staff's duty to provide the best service as possible while also making sure that the library environment is as safe as possible. We know that we can rely on our other city departments, especially our wonderful police department, to come in when needed. However, we also want to do what we can on our end first. And so with de-escalation training, we're hoping to improve that and reduce the amount of times we would need to call the police, knowing that we can if need be. We are also improving our efforts to work with our wonderful other city departments. We plan to meet with new chief on how we can work with the police department. We also met today with the Parks and Rec department on how we can pool our resources and collaborate to best serve the community and its needs. Also hope to meet with the senior center as well and any other city department that we can collaborate with. This is not necessarily new, but it has been put on pause, especially during COVID. But now that we are getting kind of back to normal as much as we can get to that point, we hope to just push as hard as we can. Staff are tired but determined and will provide the utmost service to the community and city staff as they can. I'm very proud that I have the staff that I have. I mean, they teach me every day something new, and I get to share it with some of the city staff as much as I can, even though they don't want to hear it sometimes, but darn it all, I'm going to share it because the staff are wonderful and they do great things, and I commend them for it. I'll end on a personal note. As a resident, we've already shared, with the fire and the police and the parks. I feel I am extremely fortunate to live in this community. It is a wonderful place. I think the residents are proud of this, and it it's a wonderful thing to serve the city, and I speak both for myself as well as the staff. Every day they come in and they look forward to doing what they can. And we always value any feedback as well, so if you all as a body want any feedback, please let me know. And any residents that may hear this, I welcome their feedback as well.
Thank you. City Clerk,
I have no report.
City Administrator.
Just more of a scheduling note for you. We will have our Committee of the Whole meeting for the capital budget. That'll be Tuesday, the 21st of September. Start time is to be determined, but probably in that 5:30 time frame somewhere. Given that we might have a little bit of a lighter agenda on Monday, September 20th, we will likely start the Committee of the Whole at the conclusion of our council meeting and take on some of the smaller departmental requests, get those addressed and questions answered on those on Monday night, and then the larger department requests, we'd hold those over for the discussion on Tuesday, the 21st. We don't have a date set for the operating budget capital or Committee of the Whole, but once we've got that, at least some options for that, we'll let you know.
Okay. I just have one thing to talk about, and that is back in June 15th, we adopted the commitment of action in response to the June 2nd, 2020 police calls. So we took on some responsibility where we talked about reviewing police department policies and training. Our chief, who is anxious to get lots of things done, is going to be going through 400 policies. We don't believe this council intends to review all 400 of them, but I'd like to put it on for an agenda item to discuss at the next meeting so he could have clarity as to what the expectation is, because he wants to do what you expect but not put a burden on people relative to work. And what we said at the time was that we would review Monona Police Department policies, procedures, and training methods, including but not limited to use of body cameras, use of force, and de-escalation. And certainly those will be in there, but what else the council wants to review, we'd like clarity on. So, does that cover it, Chief?
Yes.
And also he's doing, he's updating and improving the training policies, and he will report on that, but what oversight the council wants. Is that, yes, Chief?
I'll piggyback on that I'm not sure what has been brought to the council in the past for policies for approval, so.
Goes through committee, and the council took special action to put the police department policies in, but most city department policies are reviewed by staff, the mayor, and perhaps the committees involved, but don't come to the council. So
Works for me. I just want to make sure I'm not either stepping on
No.
toes or not stepping on toes.
no, we don't. No, we don't want you to step on our toes because you have big feet. So, okay. So that takes care of that. The last item is appointments. There are two appointments. Sam Borod to the Public Works Committee, effective immediately through April of 2023, and Therese Adams to Library Board immediately through June 2024.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
I have some discussion. So I won't be voting for these committee appointments. I have big concerns because the last several appointments we've made have not shown an effort to diversify our committees, and I haven't seen any evidence that we've gone out of our way to recruit people of color or of different backgrounds. Particularly, I have concerns about the library board appointment because this individual sits on two other library-related committees. I understand that that's been historically the case, that there's someone who reports from the Friends of Monona Library Board and someone who reports from the Library Foundation Board. on the library board itself. However, I have concerns that this is, because we've always done it this way, doesn't necessarily mean that we have to do it this way. And by kind of perpetuating this internal appointment, we're excluding folks in the community from being, having a voice in the library. This also perpetuates a narrative that it's a closed group of people that run things in the city, which, we're trying to get away from that narrative. As for the Public Works appointment, we really do need people with experience with engineering, construction, trades, water, sewer. We've lost 3 people on our committee over the last several years who've had that expertise. And so, now it's lacking on our committee, and I have concerns. So I will not be voting yes.
I'd just like to comment on this too. I'm in agreement with Alder Core on this item. While I don't believe there was any malicious intent or intentional skirting of the processes or procedures with this, I don't believe that we've done our due diligence in really actively seeking to diversify or avoiding conflict of interest in the selection of these individuals. I know them both. I like them. It is nothing personal. But I agree with Alder Core's assessment. I also think, I've been on the council for almost 4 years, and we hardly ever have discussion about appointments. I know that we've taken time to talk about the process and review it and make changes, but I think this is an important exercise for all of us to really dig into how these appointments occurred and just make sure that staff are consulted, make sure that, when appropriate committees are involved. I do think avoiding the narrative that it's a small cabal of people who internally make these decisions is very important, and I appreciate that that point was raised tonight.
Maybe the best thing to do tonight would be to table these nominations until the mayor's back, and because she's the one who actually offered the appointments. But if you had, and I'm going to make that motion in a second, but I don't want to do it yet. So
I have a question, because this happened, what I'm going to reference happened before I was on here, but when all of you were on here. We have a document that I've heard referred to that was done in 2018, which has to do with committee appointments. It's an 8-page document that I believe the mayor and Alder Moore worked on, which talks about the process for appointing. It was never adopted by this body, although I've heard it used as this is what provides a policy and oversight on how to handle it. And I'd look for it to see if this body had ever taken action on it, or how it came to be, or if it should have taken action on it. And so I talked a little bit to the city administrator about considering putting that document on the agenda for approval by the council, because it's something the mayor worked with and did with an Alder. And I think that would provide some clarity for all of us. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah.
Alder.
And I do know within that document there is explicit language about considering diversity when making appointments. And there's even reference to some City of Madison resources that are available that I don't believe that we're using.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody else want Alder go for it?
I just wanted to mention that at last week's DEI meeting, this was discussed at length, the committee selection process. And many people thought that, having one diverse voice on a board or a committee is just not adequate. So we really do need to work on this. And I think I'm anxious to see the committee, that document, that 8-page document. I believe I've briefly seen it, but I need to dig into that again, and I'd really appreciate seeing that come forward. One other piece of that discussion that came forward was talking about term limits on our committees. So we could have openings for new and diverse voices to come forward. So just giving you a heads up on things that we've discussed at that point.
I think that there is, my comment about term limits, difficult for me to talk about term limits, but there are sometimes we think, that people ought not serve too long, and there are some people, I can think of a couple people on Plan Commission, that if you had term limits for them, the committee would not be nearly as effective or as good as it, and you know who I'm talking about. So that's I think term limits become a sticky wicket because sometimes you don't want a committee that nobody can ever get on. But there are some people you don't want to lose for committees, and I don't know how you do the language that allows for that. And you could say no more than, no more than 2 committee members shall serve longer than, I don't know how you do it, but somehow I think you have to leave some language if you have someone who is particularly skilled at a certain thing, and a lot to think about, I think. Alder.
Yeah, and I guess I would like to add to that discussion the idea of the council, if we're being asked to approve these appointments, that we get credentials for these individuals. Often we just get names, and that doesn't mean a lot to me. And I know I've been okay with it in the past because there's been discussion within committees with either staff or with chairs as to the appointments, or if there's a recommendation by staff or by chairs. And that's not always the case now, and so we're really we're voting blindly.
So what I would agree with Alder Wood. There's a lot of good discussion here, and I'd like the mayor to be here for the discussion because she will, we all have different thoughts, but I think we all, and the same with Alder Moore, I'd like us all to be part of that discussion, so we need to have it when we can all be here.
I just want to make one more comment before we
Yep.
move the table. Obviously, if there's one thing, but I think sometimes we get, we're told, no candidates of color applied, or, no people of diverse backgrounds applied. And I don't think that that's a failure of people to have interest or enthusiasm about the possibility of participating. I think it means we're not doing our due diligence and our outreach and involvement of our total community. And so I think it signifies a need on our part versus a need on the part of the community to make sure that we're really, reaching everybody.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
I'll move to table the nomination.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
There is nothing else on our agenda tonight, so therefore a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Second. Oh, I'll give it to Alderwood.
All those in favor?
Oh,
Aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned.
Uh-oh.